This is a transfer case. It's what allows a Jeep JL Wrangler or JT Gladiator to have four-wheel drive. And just like anything on a Jeep, it's something that needs to be serviced on a regular basis. If you have a manual transmission, that should be about once every 30,000 miles. And if you have an automatic, that would be about once every 60,000 miles, or at least with a check of it at every 30. Being that Cindy and I do spend a lot of our time out on the trail, we just try to make it a habit to change our fluid at every 30, regardless if the Jeep we're working on is a manual or automatic. Fortunately, this is super easy to do, and all you'll need is the following. A couple of quarts of Mopar ATF Plus 4, or any ATF Plus 4 that meets or exceeds MS 9602 standards, and that's something that needs to be stated on the bottle. As far as tools go, you'll need a 10mm Allen bit, a 13mm socket, an 18mm socket, a ratchet, a torque wrench, a fluid pump, an oil catch pan, high temperature thread sealant, brake clean, and last but not least, some paper towels or shop rags. All right, while it may not be necessary to remove the transfer case skid plate, doing so will make this job a lot easier and a lot less messy. And to get it off, we'll need to remove the 4 bolts and 2 nuts securing them to the frame rails, cross member, and the bottom of the gas tank skid plate. So to get the 2 nuts off, we'll be using a 13mm socket, and just to help speed things along, I'll be using my impact wrench. For the bolts, we'll be needing an 18mm socket to remove them. Okay, now we can carefully lower this down. Okay, with the skid plate out of the way, I'm now going to use a 10mm Allen bit to loosen up the fill bolt. I should note that it's not necessary to completely remove the bolt, so right now we're just going to loosen it up a bit. There we go. Now for the drain bolt, and as before, we'll be using a 10mm Allen bit for that. While the transfer case drains, I'm going to take some time and clean up the fill and drain bolts with a little bit of brake clean. Now, I'm going to apply some Teflon sealant to the threads of the fill and drain bolts just to make sure that they don't leak. I should note that this is a special high temperature Teflon sealant made specifically for automotive oils and fluids. Has a pretty smell.
It does smell pretty.
I don't know why. All right, I think it's time to fill this thing back up. Once again, using our 10mm Allen bit, we're just going to tighten this up. And then we'll finish it up with a torque wrench. And I should note that the torque spec for this drain bolt is 21 foot-pounds of torque. And that's not a whole lot, so I'm going to go ahead and use an inch-pound torque wrench and set that to 252 inch-pounds, which would be the equivalent. Time for some ATF. This is where a bottle pump really comes in handy. So the transfer case will take the better part of 2 quarts to fill. And you'll know when it's full when ATF starts to ooze out of the fill hole. All right, on to number 2. There it is. Okay. Once again, we're going to use our 10mm Allen bit to secure this in place. And then switch back over to our inch-pound torque wrench, set to 252 inch-pounds. Perfect. Home stretch. Just need to get this thing back on and we'll be done. Last but not least, the skid bolts will need to be tightened to 55 foot-pounds of torque and the skid nuts to 48 foot-pounds of torque. So I'll be using my foot-pound torque wrench to do that. 55. Set this to 48. Okay. And that, my friends, is all there is to it. We hope that this video has been helpful to you and that it can help you to save some money. This is a transfer case. It's something that makes your Jeep JL Wrangler or JT Gladiator have 4-wheel drive.